Alright, so we are working on a 2015 Nissan Pathfinder. Customer is complaining about a noise in the front of the vehicle when the air conditioner is on, when the heat is on, or if they're idling someplace for a little while and the cooling fans come on, they'll hear a funky noise that sounds like you know, something like that. It sounds like a car and a bicycle spoke. So the problem is actually the cooling fans. We determined that. We know that the Pathfinders, well, it's kind of common. Pathfinders, the fans go bad sometimes and they make that funky noise. So we're going to change the fans out, put some new cooling fans in there and fix the car. So watch the video. Hakeem with AutoFix Pal. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching. Peace. Alright, so there's a little tab right there. You just push that little tab in with a pick, small screwdriver, or anything like that, and then slide the hose right off, just like you saw me do in the video. Battery removal is pretty straightforward. All of the nuts and bolts are 10 millimeters. Alright, so those are the officially sanctioned battery removal tools. Yes, they really are. No, not really, just kidding.
Okay.
All of the bolts for the battery tray and the ECU is 13 millimeters. So get yourself a 13 millimeter socket and get it done.
We have some fabulous live music later on, but right now here's the kind I prefer. Okay.
Alright, there are 7 13 millimeter bolts that hold that battery tray down, so make sure you get all 7 of those bolts out before you try and remove the battery tray.
Faithful and brave.
Alright, now we're going to take the airbox out. There is one 10mm bolt tucked away in the corner right there that you see the little arrow pointing to right now. You got to take that 10mm bolt out. Don't drop it because it's a pain in the butt to find, and it's kind of long, and it's got a little washer on the end, so it's not like an easy bolt that you can replace. I guess you could put a washer on a regular 10mm bolt, but just don't lose that bolt. Take that bolt out, and that's what you got to do to get the airbox out.
again.
Alright, so now is a good time to remove the cooling fan control module. There are 3 plugs that you will need to undo. The top 2 plugs you can undo right now, but the third lower plug you should undo when the fan control module is unbolted from the cooling fan assembly. It's just easier to do it that way because of the location of the plug's release tab. Now after you have all of the plugs undone, at least the top 2 plugs undone, you can go ahead and remove the 2 10mm bolts that hold the fan control module to the fan assembly. And once you have that out, you can go ahead and remove that final plug. Then go ahead and remove the entire fan control module out of the vehicle and put it off to the side because it would just be in the way of us removing the cooling fan assembly. Okay, so there are 2 bolts that hold the cooling fan assembly onto the radiator support assembly. The 2 bolts are T30 Torx in size, and there is one on the driver's side of the vehicle, which is the left side of the vehicle, and there's one on the passenger side of the vehicle, which is the right side of the vehicle. Right now is a good time to remove those 2 bolts. Once those 2 bolts are removed, we can go ahead and carefully slide the fan assembly out from the driver's side of the vehicle, as you will see me do momentarily in the video.
Once again.
Right now, I am removing one of the 2 10mm bolts that hold the radiator fan control module onto the radiator fan assembly. You don't necessarily have to remove the fan control module to remove the fan assembly, but I do find it to be a little easier to slide the fan assembly out of the vehicle with the control module removed before attempting to remove the fan assembly. Alright, so you will have to undo the power supply and control wire harness from the fan assembly. It is fastened to the fan assembly using one of those annoying clips that are removable by pinching the 2 release tabs located in the back of the clip. However, I will not fault anyone that decides they would rather just cut the clip off the harness and be done with it. You can easily replace the clip with the standard zip tie to keep the harness in place and out of harm's way. The choice is yours, but I will be removing the clip and reusing it since I've gotten pretty good at removing them and I don't have any zip ties handy right now. So that's that. Alright, so at the bottom of the fan assembly, there are 3 rubber grommets. Those rubber grommets go into the fan support. There are holes in the bottom of the fan support that those rubber grommets will fit into perfectly. So make sure that those holes are lined up with the rubber grommets and that it slides into position correctly, because if it doesn't slide into position correctly, the bolts at the top that secure the fan assembly to the radiator support will not line up, and your fan will be flip-flopping around inside the engine compartment, making all types of funky noises and rubbing into stuff, and it's just not a good repair. So make sure that fits in there properly and everything lines up properly, and you will be good to go. Alright, so the bolt holes for the fan control module are not threaded. The bolts themselves will create the threads when you screw them in, so just be aware that it will take a little bit of effort to screw the fan control module bolts down because of this. Alright, so I know this might seem a little obvious, but don't forget to plug the fan control module back in. Make sure you plug the fan control module back in before you put everything back together, because if you don't, your car will overheat, and you don't want that to happen. Alright, so what you see me attempting to illustrate with my hands in the video is the mounting point for the mass airflow sensor harness clip. The clip shown in the video attaches to the upper section of the air filter housing, so be sure to put it back in its place when you're done. Alright, so I know this isn't exactly the best angle to see what it is that I'm doing, but I am plugging in the transmission control module and the engine control module. It's very important that you plug all 4 plugs in. There is 1 for the transmission control module and there's 3 plugs for the engine control module. If you miss one, the car probably won't start and there's a possibility that you will damage something, meaning that you'll have to reprogram something later on. I'm not sure that this will happen, but don't take the chance. Just make sure you plug everything in and you should be good to go. Alright, so be sure to put the battery tray liner, that black plastic thing, in the correct way. There are 3 dimples on the liner, and some vehicles actually have an arrow on the liner to indicate which direction it goes, but this particular vehicle does not have an arrow. Just make sure to have the single dimple closest to the front of the car. There are 3 dimples, 2 in the back and 1 in the front. The one in the front needs to go closest to the front of the car. And make sure that the dimples on the plastic liner fall into the dimples on the metal tray that the plastic liner rests on. The plastic liner will sit flush and it will not slide around when it is installed correctly. So basically the dimples on the lower tray keep the dimples on the upper tray in place and stop that thing from sliding around, which stops the battery from sliding around. So if it's incorrectly, the battery shouldn't go anywhere and everything will be nice and smooth. For some reason, people seem to think that the battery tie downs need to be super tight. They do not need to be super tight. They just need to be snug. So don't tighten them up too much. Just tighten to the point where the battery stops moving, and that's it. You don't need to go any further than that. So don't over tighten the battery tie downs, and your battery will last longer, and you won't get acid all over your engine compartment and just corrode everything under there that the battery drips the acid on. So Watch the tightness. Don't make it too tight. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that.